Here we are, day 5 of preliminary hearings in the case of the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez by artist David. And it's exactly what it's supposed to be, and exactly what we knew was going to happen. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Do all that. I got y'all until this thing is over with. I think it's going to be a long way from over with, but as we get new things, new information, and all that type of stuff, and when the trial happens, I'll be right here for you. I got you. But in the meantime, let's talk about what happened on the final day of what we knew was going to happen. Because that preliminary hearing, all 5 of them days, was exactly what they were supposed to be. So when we left off, they had Detective Corey Farrell, who basically was a part of like the cyber crimes and all that type of stuff unit, went through the phone and went through text messages and pictures and all that type of stuff. And we come to find out that there was an abortion, and there was talks of a Only Awesome plan or something where they're supposed to run away together. All the things that pretty much submit that there was an inappropriate sexual relationship between David and Celeste. And there was also some mentions of his mom knew about the extent of the relationship too, David. And there's also mention that the parents of Celeste knew about this relationship. But today is the day that we figure out, because we know that the prosecutor hinges on motive at this point. And we're about to find out the motive. So Detective Farrell for the LAPD returned to the stand to finish his direct examination and was later cross-examined. So Farrell tested that investigators recovered between 8,000 and 9,000 text messages exchanged between Burke and 14-year-old Celeste from David iCloud account. Prosecutors focused on messages exchanged between April 22nd and April 26, 2025. Including conversations the day before and the day they alleged Celeste was last seen alive. So in one exchange, prosecutors said an argument erupted over David's friendship with another woman, Asia Collins. After David explained Collins had been at his home to pick up Coachella guest wristbands, Celeste responded with increasingly angry messages writing, "Oh my God, I swear to God I will kill you. I will strangle you to death. And later, I will tell my dad so many lies about you. I will end your career, end your life." There's your motive. There's your motive. Prosecutors then turned to text messages from April 23rd, 2025, the day they alleged Celeste was unalive. Farrell testified the messages showed David arranging an Uber to pick Celeste up near her family's home in Lake Elsinore after she texted, "Get it to 33070, which they said that's where she lived. Later that evening, after Uber arrived at Davis Hollywood Hills home at around 10:10 p.m., prosecutors then displayed what they believe are the final messages between the two. David texted, "Gate open, door unlocked," followed by, "Uber said you're here. Where you at? Hello, bro," and Celeste. Farrell testified that there were no further messages from Celeste after that point. David continued texting, "Bro, blocking me? Hello? I'm gonna call Jen, bro. You're scaring me. Where are you? And please." Prosecutors also presented Tesla navigation and cell phone evidence they contend showed David's Tesla left his residence around 11:30 and later traveled towards that Santa Barbara secluded area they were talking about. And then he had some stops near Lake Cachuma and a Tesla supercharger in Santa Nina. During cross-examination, defense attorney Blair Burke introduced a 90-page exhibit containing text message exchange between David and Celeste between April 22nd and April 23rd, 2025. He told the court the exhibit was prepared using raw iCloud message data, arguing the defense had not previously had the benefit of a Celebrate extraction. Silverman argued and told the court the defense had received the complete raw data and could analyze it in any format they chose. Burke then revisited messages prosecutors had highlighted during direct, arguing additional context needs to be considered. She directed Farrell to messages she said preceded Celeste's threats, including one in which Celeste allegedly wrote, "I will straight up mutilate your pee-pee." She said the word, but Farrell confirmed the message appeared in the records. Burke also highlighted David's response, in which he wrote, "You have turned it into a bigger thing than this conversation right now. The only way makes sense is when I don't tell you until after the fact. You don't listen to me." She later pointed to additional messages in which Celeste allegedly threatened to contact David's mother and people associated with his work, writing she had old phone numbers. She could find your mom's number to text her. You could find your mom's number to text her anytime. And that word will spread to your work, girl. Farrell acknowledged the messages referenced threatening to tell David's mother, kill him, and make certain things public, but testified he did not recall seeing Celeste threaten to report Burke to law enforcement. This appeared to be the defense poking holes in the prosecution theory that David allegedly killed Celeste, so she would not go to law enforcement. Poking holes. The defense also questioned Farrell about the nature of David and Celeste's relationship prior to the homicide investigation. Farrell testified investigators determined that members of Celeste's family, including her parents, aunt, cousins, and adult sister, as well as some school friends, knew about the relationship before April 2025. He also confirmed investigators learned Celeste's parents signed a notarized travel consent form in September 24, allowing Burke to take her to London, and that David attended church with Celeste's family and had previously taken her to the mall as well. They could have protected that little girl from this, man. They could have protected that little girl from this. That's crazy, man. I mean, it's all bad, but it starts there, in my opinion. Farrell agreed Burke's co-workers knew who Celeste was, though he disagreed with Burke's accusation that they understood the full nature of their relationship. I think it's interesting when she said, "I'm going to tell my dad so many lies about you." And he went to church with the family. Like, I'm intrigued at how they're going to spin that part of it, why they let it happen. At several points, Burke attempted to introduce additional evidence about the relationship, including testimony she said suggested Celeste had previously committed domestic violence against David, reference messages in which she argued Celeste discussed wanting to kill herself. Farrell testified he did remember seeing at least one message in which Celeste referred to wanting to kill herself, though he said he could not say it occurred on multiple occasions. Burke also aimed to show Celeste as a person who repeatedly initiated plans to meet with David in the days before her death. Reading from a defense exhibit, she highlighted messages in which Celeste asked, "Am I able to see you on Thursday at all? Bro, there's no possible way I cannot see you at all this week. Let me see you Wednesday night. And, well, we need to talk in person, please, man." David responded no to several of those requests before later agreeing to see her, according to messages read in court. Burke further noted it was Celeste who suggested Burke ordering an Uber at 8:30 p.m. on April 23rd, and who later texted she was almost there and asked him to open the door if he was home. Farrell agreed those messages originated from Celeste. The defense then turned to allege the timeline on April 23rd. Farrell acknowledged investigators determined David had been using a virtual reality headset, playing a game and interacting with two other people while Celeste was traveling to his home in an Uber. Burke confirmed investigators placed the Uber's arrival time at approximately 10:10 p.m. and Burke's text asking, "Where are you?" at about 10:31. So she arrived at his house at 10:10 p.m. and David's text asking, "Where are you?" at about 10:31 p.m. So 20 minutes later and some change. Farrell agreed investigators' timeline focused on that roughly 20-minute period. He also acknowledged investigators had no eyewitness who saw Celeste exit the Uber, no witness who observed what occurred inside David's Doheny drive home during that period, and no communication documented that David and Celeste were doing between 10:13 and 10:31 p.m. So on redirect, Silverman asked why investigators were unable to get surveillance footage from the relevant time period. Farrell testified that because Celeste's body had been hidden and investigators did not know where to focus their search until months later. Any potentially relevant surveillance video wasn't available by the time the investigation reached that stage. In closing statements, defense attorney urged Judge Charlaine Olmedo to dismiss all charges, arguing prosecutors have failed to present sufficient evidence to establish probable cause on any count, including a special circumstance allegation. She also told the court the defense was challenging the prosecution's case on 5 separate grounds, beginning with the first-degree murder. Focusing on the murder count, they argue prosecutors had not established either express malice or implied malice, both of which are required under California law. She acknowledged prosecutors presented evidence that Celeste Rivas Hernandez died, noting DNA and blood evidence found in David's garage and Tesla were consistent with dismemberment, but she argued that is evidence of a death, not of a killing, and specifically not proof that David intentionally killed Celeste. She characterized the prosecution's case as entirely circumstantial, arguing it may suggest a type of homicide occurred, but does not establish murder of the required mental state. They argued there was no evidence David had any intent to kill Celeste, pointing to the text messages introduced during Pharrell's cross. She told the judge the messages reflected affection rather than hostility, saying David repeatedly expressed love and concern for Celeste, even during disagreements and after breakups. According to Bednarski, the text from David contained no threats, no history of violence, and no indication David harbored a deliberate intent to kill. She argued the text messages showed significant provocation from Celeste. She pointed to messages in which Celeste threatened to kill David, strangle him, mutilate him, and falsely accuse him to her father, arguing those communications undermined the prosecution's theory of implied malice. Referring to one chain exchange, she noted Celeste wrote, "I will kill you, I will strangle you," while also threatening to straight up mutilate David. He argued those statements constituted considerable provocation and said the prosecution had failed to establish the absence of provocation required to support an implied malice theory. The defense also relied heavily on the testimony of Grant Ho, noted that he testified Celeste died from 2 penetrating wounds, but acknowledged he could not determine how the injuries occurred. The order in which they happened, whether they happened simultaneously, what weapon caused them, or whether the wounds bled internally or externally. She argued homicide's determination rested largely on the post-mortem dismemberment, concealment of the body, and was absent of any explanation of death. Bednarski further argued Dr. Ho repeatedly testified the injuries could have caused difficulty breathing or fatal bleeding, but could not say with certainty what actually occurred because of the advanced decomposition. She reiterated that Ho acknowledged he was not a trauma surgeon and testified that the timing and effects of the wounds were outside his expertise. According to the defense, the medical testimony established only what was possible, not what actually happened. That's something to stand on. What remains is suspicion arising from concealment. Concealment is not murder. Bednarski next argued prosecutors also failed to establish probable cause for any of the 3 special circumstance allegations, claiming each required a higher level of proof than the evidence presented during the preliminary hearing. Addressing the allegation that David killed Celeste by lying in wait, defense said prosecutors failed to show David deliberately lured her to his phone. She said the evidence instead shows Celeste repeatedly insisting on coming to his home, despite his initial reluctance. They pointed to text messages in which David repeatedly told Celeste no when she asked to see him before eventually agreeing. She set the time and the place. He continued to convince her otherwise, asked her to wait, put it off, in fact, telling her no. She also noted testimony that David was interacting with 2 friends while playing video games an hour before Celeste arrived, arguing that evidence failed to establish that he was watching and waiting for her. The defense also relied on Dr. Grant Ho's testimony, arguing the medical evidence undermined the prosecution's theory. They noted that Ho testified he could not determine how the fatal wounds were inflicted, the order in which they occurred, whether they had been in struggle, or what weapon caused them. She also argued Ho's testimony that the fatal abdominal wound traveled from the front to back was consistent with prosecutors' theory of a surprise attack. The medical examiner did not prove that. It disproved that. When arguing the allegation that the killing was committed for financial gain, defense prosecutors failed to establish David stood to receive any financial benefit from Celeste's death. We know it wasn't about that. It was about he could lose money. That's where I'm at. It's where he could lose money. She said the theory was speculative. David's recording contracts, royalty advances, all that, future earnings, all that. And then said that a prospective music career is not concrete financial gain, calling the prosecution's theory novel and unsupported. Finally, the defense challenged the special circumstance allegation that David killed Celeste to prevent her from reporting or testifying about a crime. She argued the evidence showed only that Celeste threatened to expose the relationship to family members, friends, and online, not to law enforcement, referring to text messages discussed during the detective's testimony. Celeste threatened to tell David's mother, damage his reputation, ruin him socially and professionally, but never threatened to report him to police. But reporting him on social media is going to be enough there will be an investigation after that. And I don't know how you keep things going. You don't keep that kind of money. We see what's going on with EDP 445. We see how his life just went to shit. He can't go nowhere. He can't do nothing. Can't even drive Uber. He can't go out in public. All that type of stuff just because of attempting and talking, let alone being an actual relationship. So that would be very damaging to him for sure. So the defense urged the judge not to hold David to answer on any of the charges, arguing prosecutors have failed to establish advanced planning, deliberate intent, financial motive, or witness intimidation. She stated in conclusion, the evidence presented at the preliminary hearing established only that Celeste died and that her body was later dismembered and concealed, not that prosecutors had met the legal burden required to support the murder charge or any of the three special circumstance allegations. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman next argued to Judge Olmedo to reject the defense's arguments, explaining that they had presented evidence that exceeded the standard required at preliminary hearing. I'm sure the court isn't surprised to hear that the people's position is the exact opposite. Responding first to the defense's challenge to the murder charge, Silverman argued California law permits both malice and intent to be proven through circumstantial evidence, noting that many homicide cases, particularly those involving the abuse of children, are built without eyewitness testimony. Silverman argued that might be how they slip out of this. Silverman argued the evidence showed that 13-year-old into 14 Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been threatening to expose her relationship with David before she traveled to his Hollywood Hills home April 23rd. Within roughly 20 minutes of her arrival, Silverman said the text message evidence indicates Celeste stopped responding. We have an underage minor who was threatening to expose this relationship within 20 minutes of her arrival at the defendant's home. She's obviously dead based on the text messages. Silverman rejected the defense's argument about the medical testimony, arguing was that he was clear that Celeste died from at least 2 penetrating wounds to the torso, while acknowledging the decomposition created some limitations. Silverman argued the autopsy was inconclusive. The autopsy was not inconclusive, she told the court. It clearly stated the cause of death was 2 wounds to the torso. It didn't say that. It didn't say that. Silverman noted that Dr. Ho testified the wounds could have caused death within seconds to minutes and generally would have resulted in bleeding. She said Burke's actions after supported the prosecution's theory, reminding the investigators found no evidence David called 911, contacted law enforcement, or attempted to save Celeste's life. Nothing sounds like an accident. We are talking about a 13-year-old child. When addressing the lying in wait special circumstance, Silverman argued that prosecution was not required to prove David literally watched for Celeste's arrival, but that he launched a surprise attack after luring her to his home. That's going to come back to bite him in the butt because he didn't lure her. She was begging to come over. I mean, and again, we all can come up with our own theory, if you will, and we all have common sense, but they have to prove that without a reasonable doubt. So just keep that in mind. It might sound open and shut, but when you say things like he lured her, the defense can step back and be like, he never told her to come over. Matter of fact, he said, don't. They can use that. One thing is true. He was in an inappropriate relationship with her. We got that. Evidence is there for that. But it's just you got to prove that this is what happened. Burke ordered the Uber, texted Celeste that the gate was open and the door unlocked, and said those actions meant he was prepared for her arrival. Silverman also rejected the defense argument that the prosecution failed to establish a financial motive. citing California appellate decisions, including cases she identified from 1989 and 2008. Silverman argued the law does not require financial gain to be a sole or primary motive for a killing. Instead, she said courts have recognized that simply avoiding a financial loss can satisfy. Then that's what I was talking about earlier. Can satisfy the financial gain special circumstance. She said Burke had financial interest in protecting his music career, which was threatened by his relationship with Celeste. She argued the evidence shows Celeste had repeatedly threatened to reveal their relationship and argued David's motive was not only to protect his career, but also to prevent the possibility of criminal charges. This is a minor who was groomed and sexually abused and gaslit. Silverman said she told the court Burke repeatedly convinced Celeste that she had initiated the relationship and described him as a clever adult who helped her evade her parents by arranging Uber rides to his home. Silverman also pointed to David's interactions with police after Celeste reported missing in 2024, arguing they demonstrated consciousness of guilt. She reminded the court that Riverside County Sheriff's deputies repeatedly contacted David after Celeste disappeared, and that Los Angeles deputies later conducted a welfare check at the Hollywood Hills home. David had acted calmly per body-worn camera footage and told deputies he barely knew Celeste and he had met her only once. That's a lie. So that's a big piece of evidence too. Silverman said the statement was clearly contradicted by the evidence presented during the hearing, including thousands of text messages, photographs, and sexually explicit images that documented an ongoing sexual relationship beginning shortly after Celeste turned 13. Turning to the physical evidence, Silverman reminded the court of testimony from LAPD Detective Joshua Byers, who described finding Celeste's dismembered remains inside the trunk compartment of David's Tesla. She argued investigators established through digital surveillance footage and Tesla records that David was the last person known to drive that vehicle before leaving on tour. Silverman said the evidence suggests he parked the Tesla away from his home as Celeste's body decomposed inside and stocked the vehicle with numerous air fresheners to mask the odor. Silverman, and that's a big piece there. I mean, you don't need a diploma to know that. That's fishy in itself. Your whip, your Tesla is just gone. You got it like that. That's weird. Silverman also cited testimony regarding blue plastic fragments embedded in Celeste's bones, the amputated ring and pinky fingers on her left hand, and evidence prosecutors say was destroyed or never recovered, including David's iPhone 16 Pro Max. She said investigators also recovered evidence that David used multiple aliases, Travion Davis, when purchasing Amazon items linked to the case, including chainsaws, a burn cage, and a body bag prosecutors alleged was used to conceal Celeste's remains. At one point, Silverman stated her body turned to liquid while he went on tour. She also rejected defense suggestions questioning the ownership of one of the phones involved in the investigation, iPhone 15 Max, arguing that regardless of who owned the device, the messages, photographs, and iCloud data corroborated one another. Silverman told the court the evidence showed the sexual relationship and grooming lasted well beyond 3 months and involved numerous encounters documented through text messages, photographs, and videos. She noted the testimony she noted the testimony describing conversations about contraception, pregnancy, marriage, and starting a family, as well as sexually explicit images and videos prosecutors alleged constitute child sexual abuse material. CSIM. Silverman argued David continued using Celeste for her sex, emphasizing the word as she addressed the court. She said Celeste was a child who believed David loved her, but manipulated and groomed her for years. According to Silverman, that dynamic led to jealousy and threats by Celeste to expose the relationship. After Celeste wanted to meet David on the evening of April 23rd, Silverman argued she had no idea what awaited her the night that she was killed. Silverman argued David then made the multiple trips to Santa Barbara area before continuing on with his music career as if she never existed, while continuing to order items they alleged were connected to concealing and disposing of evidence. Silverman also mentioned the evidence of cleanup in the garage. The defense gave a brief rebuttal, with Benarski arguing prosecutors presented no evidence David intended to prevent Celeste from testifying against David legally. She noted that numerous relatives friends, and business associates already knew about the relationship and argued there was no evidence David ever attempted to intimidate Celeste or stop her from speaking. The opposite facts occurred here. After hearing roughly 5 days of testimony and closing arguments from both sides, Judge Charlaine Olmedo denied the defense's motion to dismiss, finding prosecutors had met the relatively low burden of proof required at a preliminary hearing. It appears to me that the people have met their burden of proof, including the special circumstances. Olmedo said from the bench, she ordered David Anthony Burke held to answer on all charges and all 3 special circumstance allegations, setting the case on course for trial. Due back in court August 31st for the arraignment, and the trial could be 90 days from the arraignment, but it will be set at a later date, and that's unlikely. District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced after the ruling that his office was still unsure if they're going for the death penalty. So here's what we got. We do know that he was in a sexual relationship with a very, very young girl. We do know that they text and there was some threats on Celeste's end. We do know that nothing about this whole situation sounds right at all. All signs are pointing to that he did it. They got to prove it. And that's the thing. We can put 2 and 2 together ourselves if we want to. I get that. But you got to prove it. And from what I'm seeing here, the only thing that we can definitively prove, we know that Tesla was riding around and that's the one she was found in. Was traveling with his phone. But one thing is for sure, we know that he had an inappropriate relationship with a minor. We know that. But that's a whole nother different thing. And I think that maybe even that might be what he's going for, because we all know how those type of cases go. Slap on the wrist. Legally. I don't think anybody ever worked with him ever again. Musically, he'll never be famous again, nothing like that. But that's his best case scenario, that he somehow doesn't get hit with the murder, and they come back around and say there's evidence that you was messing with a minor. And I don't know the statute on that either. Can they come back around? We do have evidence that you did it, but I mean, that's what they did to Diddy. I mean, this isn't about minors or nothing. That wasn't about minors, but it's the fact that happened so long ago, and they was able to circle back around on him, and that's what they did. So that's his best case scenario, is hoping that he gets labeled as a PDF file and lives the rest of his life. I'm sure he has some money put up, and he would live a quality of life out of the spotlight. But they gotta prove that he killed. It looks like it. We can say all day long and speculate. Yes, 100%. It does really look like he did it. They gotta prove it though. So there it is. That was the pre-trial. If you like stuff like that, man, like and comment. Please subscribe. Do all the things. I appreciate it. On the TikTok, on the Facebooks, all the Twitter, everything, Instagram. Follow me, UNIQO Williams. I appreciate that when y'all do that. But I'll be here when this comes back up. I'll drop shorts and things like that. But for now, it's Spider-Man week, and let's move on to something a little bit more light. All right. So we got more movie reviews coming up. That's gonna keep on coming. They gonna keep going. They ain't gonna stop. And then I'm gonna go back and watch some older movies, and we're gonna keep this thing going. So again, if you like the content you're seeing, make sure you like and subscribe. So again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Do You Hear Me? The Unico Williams. I holla. Thanks for watching. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. Don't forget, every Thursday, the full podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and mama, I'm on Spotify. Overall 99 ENT bring you videos from Friday all the way to Friday. So be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Again, thank you so much. I holla.